Hey folks, so a while back I'd been granted a review key to an early access title, specifically Tahoe Games' fast-paced action platformer / roguelite, Rising Hell, and honestly I'm sure some of you may recall me dabbling in it on stream. Well, it recently fully released, so I figured I ought to give the devil his due and tell you folks if I thought this demonic diversion was up and coming, or if I was hoping this particular hell would freeze over. I'm your host Arlyeon. Let's find out together. Lucifer has fallen, his rebellion against the heavens having come to an abrupt and ignoble end. In the aftermath, his broken body was imprisoned within the Zircum, the big giant hell shrubbery. It is here that Hell's Legion wait for his return while conspiring ways to expedite the process. Not that this impacts us. No, our tale follows a trio of tormented souls, each of whom were offered a way out of hell by an entirely trustworthy fellow named Mephistopheles the Trickster Demon. What a guy. The only hitch in this plan is that their way forward is guarded by the 4 archdemons who rule over the Inferno during Lucifer's absence. Now, while this is all served up to us in a decidedly pretty-looking intro movie, I'd like to stress that half of this was in fact legitimately irrelevant. All that stuff with Lucifer, not even a gag, even with the ominous foreshadowing bits, it never comes into play. And really, it won't even be until the end of the game that you get any sort of narrative payoff, since of the sparse few speaking NPCs you encounter, their lines mostly boil down to flavor text. Hell, you don't even get to find out more about the characters you're playing as unless you either read the online comics or reach an ending with them. And in that case, you still need to reach the latter half of their endings, given the first half is pretty much identical between all the characters. So what I'm saying is, as far as story bits go, it was a tepid experience, though I did appreciate that there was at least something distinct for each of the characters by the end of it. That said, if you're truly lore-starved, there are bestiary entries to pore over, just don't expect anything major from those. Instead, the focus ought to be on Rising Hell's gameplay, because this is the crux of why I sunk so many hours into the game. The central premise is simple enough. You just need to fight your way up through the various stages of the satanic shrubbery, pummeling and platforming through enemies and obstacles in your path, culminating in the occasional dramatic mini-boss, or one of the big bads, the archdemons. And yet, part of what had me engrossed was just how the game flowed. See, control-wise, things are simple. Your characters each have a basic combo chain, a dash that provides iframes, as well as some delightful mobility in the form of wall jumps and double jumps. That said, by jumping into the enemy, they'll pull off the Hellbreak, an extremely powerful attack that also sends you launching upwards and resets your jumps. So, all of a sudden, you're afforded with a very powerful offensive and mobility option, which lends itself to evasive maneuvers, platforming hijinks, or even just launching yourself through the stage at top speed and potentially face-first into spikes. And that's not really all the trouble it can get you into either. See, a notable element about Rising Hell is the focus on ascending, to the point that you can't actually double back in a given stage once you've advanced up a platform. And this becomes painful when you realize that you're also trying your best to accumulate delicious souls along the way. Specifically the red ones. I mean, green ones heal you, but our equally Satan-themed orbs have a distinct use given they serve as a currency for that run, enabling you to buy assortment of perks to help with that run from a random selection presented at the end of each stage. And these things make a hell of a difference, like bonus damage when you're at high health, extra defense when you're at low health, regenerating shields, extra currency, and even a one-shot auto-revival perk. It's just, they're really powerful options which can be used to flesh out your build, especially when you factor in that you gain additional bonuses for stacking multiple perks of the same type. For example, stacking multiple attack perks scales your damage harder, life perks give you more health, defense perks, more defense. That said, my favorite is the red soul related perks, since they cause everything to grant bonus souls, even objects, which helps a lot if I have the fortune of encountering the Trickster Treasury early on. See, while you're normally able to save up for a singular perk at the end of each stage, there's chances you'll come across a side room where Mephistopheles is just chillaxing it. Not only does he offer you yet more souls for the low cost of bleeding out your health on his floor, he also offers you a trio of perks, and you can snag all 3 if you've got the coin for it, unlike the one you were able to acquire at the end of each stage. And I mean, he also offers healing, I guess, but who wants to spend their red souls on that? Suffice to say, missing this room definitely lends itself to yet more reasons why rushing at breakneck speeds can be bad. Now, I'd actually place this as one of the most random elements of the game, really, since there's actually a certain degree of stability in the routes you're afforded. Because while the ways you empower yourself are extremely random, the route isn't as much as you'd expect in a roguelite, given that certain areas remain consistent in each of your runs. Though I specify certain, because there's also a fair number of moments where you'll be left with a choice in your path, and these are actually drawn from a decent pool of options for each area, enough so to make your choice feel meaningful given how diverse each stage feels. And I'm talking obstacles like ascending up a platforming puzzle of enemies, chaining hell breaks in order to rise up faster than a wall of buzzsaws that's chasing you, or navigating mazes while slowly suffocating with a poisonous miasma, or climbing a trap-ridden fortress while lasers rain down like judgment from the heavens. There's some pretty diverse areas to challenge, and sometimes your options will really boil down to which of these feels less shitty. That, and the mini-bosses are like an evil box of chocolates, given that while you can predict when that stage is going to pop up, you don't really have a way of figuring out which one you're going to get in a run. Inversely, the major bosses, the archdemons, are incredibly consistent, as you'll always know who to expect. It just doesn't matter, given that they provide some genuinely solid challenges which will test your skills and the overall strength of your build. Suffice to say, this is often where a run would hit a brick wall for me. Thankfully, even if you lose, you're not actually barred from making a more lasting form of progress. See, throughout your journey, you're also acquiring purple gems called Blight, which represent a more permanent form of currency that carries over between playthroughs. What's important about Blight is that you actually use it to acquire lasting unlocks, such as gaining the ability to use the other 2 protagonists, as well as unlocking new starter relics, and these latter items are actually pretty interesting, as you can equip only one of them, but they provide benefits and debuffs that change the entire feeling of a given run. For instance, I'm rather fond of the relics that lock a character into an elemental power-up. Normally these things are fun temporary buffs that you can pick up, in the same vein as the little boosts that give you temporary healing or a bonus shield. But these things really stand out to me because they change the moveset of a character and provide different applications, such as a homing thing of lightning that chains off to other enemies, or setting everything on fire nearby. That said, they also have limited ammo and require a fair bit of perk support, which is entirely eschewed if you grab one of these starting relics, and that in turn frees up a lot of space for the type of character you can build. That said, you can also just be a lunatic and get the you die in one hit starting relic, since it lets you dish out the exact same thing to all your opposition. Just don't step on a spike. And hey, if you run out of things to actually use your Blight on because you bought everything, you can actually always just burn it at the end of the stage where there's the perk selection, because that lets you reset your current choices. Technically, this does get prohibitively expensive if you keep doing it, but it can really help to hunt down specific perks later on in a run. That's not the only permanent form of progression that exists either, given that you also have an account level, which essentially gains experience as you get score. That's right, it's actually mechanically beneficial to be able to get through stages at top speed while chaining combos to the high heavens and getting as many red souls as possible, because later account levels will not only enable you to buy brand new shiny starting relics, they also unlock new perks for you to encounter within the Satan shrubbery, and some of them are just awesome. They also make tackling the torment modes a fair bit more accessible since, yeah, if you beat the game, you're provided access to the torment level, stacking difficulty modifiers which not only influence the stage as a whole, but also add obstacles to the boss arenas to make the archdemon fights even worse. And that's not even the crux of the content you have to go over either. If you want a more arcadey experience or just hunt down achievements, there's a whole slew of alternate game modes, like the Godslayer boss battles, which task you with beating the archdemons with no upgrades. There's also combat arenas, death trap-ridden gauntlets, and even a mode that sees fit to task you with ascending a tower by chaining hell breaks without getting hit once. It's freaking hard. There's also a daily challenge mode, but I was more keen on just face butting the central content. But now that we have all of that out of the way, it's time to address the aesthetics, and as much as I riffed on the intro and outro for their story details, I won't knock them for their style. They look good. Frankly, the entire game does. I really dug the character and boss designs, the attack animations. I was just a little bit bothered by some of the mini-bosses being essentially normal enemies but larger and recolored, but it is what it is. And also, audio-wise, the music's nice and matches the overall energy of the game. Frankly, the only thing I'd probably nitpick is that chaining a lot of hell breaks and hits together will get very obnoxious very fast unless you tweak your sound effects down. Still, this is bringing us to our episode's conclusion. I have to say, I had a lot of fun, honestly, getting through Rising Hell and unlocking everything. It was actually the subject of quite a few streams. Yeah, I still can't bring myself to give a single shit about its narrative, but the gameplay itself was engrossing enough for me to just stay occupied for a solid 29 hours, and honestly, that's basically all I could ask for. Plus, it was fun to make stupid meme perk builds and just blow through the game on higher torment levels, so overall, I would genuinely recommend this as an accessible, action-packed roguelite. If you're a fan of Honestly, if you're a fan of platformers, action games, and aren't adverse to a bit of roguelike things, definitely give this game a look. Overall, I'd say it's a solid hit. Anywho, thanks for tuning in. If you agree, disagree, or just have something to say to me, even a critique of my opinions or a game you'd like to see me dive into, feel free to comment. And if you have an interest in supporting my efforts to create new indie reviews, interviews, and gaming content, you can hit the subscribe button and the bell so you know when there's a new release. There's also a Discord. There is a link to it in the description, so you become a part of our community over at the Crit Hit Cauldron. Anyways, that all said, I will catch you on the next episode of Crit Hit, or over when I stream one of the indie games I'm going to be reviewing at twitch.tv/Arlyeon. Take care till then, folks. See ya!